One of the questions I often ask people right when they're at that moment of choosing to be the source of their answer is, what's stopping you from choosing to be that now? And one of the most common answers that I get is, I can't because I still have all of this evidence or this proof that my threat is true and I can't let that go. Or they say, I'm still reacting to it. It feels like it still has a grip on me. Another thing they say is, I understand it cognitively. I get the concept, but I don't actually feel it. Long story short, because they have all of this evidence from the past that they feel like they can't let go, it's stopping them from stepping fully into something new, into a new identity and a new future. And a lot of times people actually really cling to that evidence. Like they don't want to let it go. Then there's another group of people who, once they choose to be the source of their answer, whatever that is, they actually just start to see new evidence, like their focus shifts. Most of the time that evidence has already been there. They had just been ignoring it up until that point of making that choice. You might already know this, but the truth is that you can find evidence for anything. It's called confirmation bias. When a person establishes a belief, our brains naturally focus and pay attention to all the evidence that supports that belief in our environment and naturally ignores all the evidence that doesn't support it. For some people, just knowing that fact is enough. The belief that they're the source of their answer. But for a lot of people, it doesn't really work that way. In many cases, our evidence really does get in the way, and we have to deal with it more actively, directly, and powerfully. So this video is all about undoing your evidence. It's about finishing your unfinished business. It's about clearing it all out so that there's actually a space for you to actually step into fully experiencing being the source of your answer. And the work that you will be doing will require courage and a relentless pursuit of complete freedom. And by completing the work, it will rock your world. First, let's get clear on what evidence actually is. Evidence is any memory, event, situation, or experience from your past, whether that's from this morning, yesterday, or last week, or 5 years old, that you feel actually proves that your threat is true, or at minimum stops you from believing that you can be the source of something different. And the impact of having all of this evidence or unfinished business is huge. You can think of it this way. It's the difference between seeing a child that has limitless energy, who feels that they are perfect and happy and complete, and who knows that anything in their life is possible, and an adult who has a fractured view of themselves, who feels powerless or resigned or hopeless, and who regularly deals with stress and fatigue on a daily basis. The biggest difference between those two people is all the evidence or unfinished business that the adult is carrying around. It's like baggage, and I know that's cliche, but it's nonetheless very fitting. Because as long as you have unfinished business, you're often preoccupied or distracted with things that you did or didn't do, or someone else did or didn't do, and thinking about what could have gone different or what the impact was. And you can never actually be fully present anytime, anywhere, even when you're by yourself. You constantly carry around and deal with emotions like regret, shame, sadness, guilt, anger, and anxiety. And most of the time, those emotions don't even match the situation that you're in. Or even worse, you make the situation that you're in match those emotions. And then your energy is constantly drained because you're spending all of this time trying to resist being distracted, trying to resist having these emotions. And you just constantly feel fatigued or tired or tense. And your evidence becomes your filter. So you walk around and your whole view of the world is actually through the lens of your evidence. And that includes yourself and other people. And until you clear it out, then your identity actually is your evidence. And there's really no space to update your identity or create something new. And when you deal with all of your evidence, you no longer have to deal with all of that. Here's another way of thinking about it. Consider that your memory, beliefs, and resulting identity actually takes up space in your brain like real estate. And the stronger and more evidence that a belief has, like the more memories that are tied to it, the more space it takes up. Think about it this way. Each piece of evidence, each memory that's tied to your ever-present threat is like a vacant or derelict building. You want to come in and build something new, make the place look nice, and all that really is your new belief and identity around being the source of your answer. But you can't, because all of the land is occupied already. So how do people typically solve land problems? So that they actually match your choice to be the source of your answer, or you actually deal with them so that they're no longer actually evidence for your threat. Either way, you gotta finish your unfinished business. You have to undo all of your evidence. And now I'm gonna tell you exactly how. First, how about we pause? If you haven't already, or if you only did it partially, take a moment to make a list of every piece of evidence, big and small, that you can think of that actually supports your ever-present threat or gets in the way of you seeing yourself as the source of your answer. That's all the things you did or didn't do, other people did or didn't do, or all the experience that actually contributed to your threat. It should take about 10 minutes to make a pretty good list. And then when you're done, restart the video. Okay, there are 3 ways that you can actually undo your evidence or finish your unfinished business. The first one is restorying, which really only requires a conversation with yourself. And that one can be really powerful and effective, but sometimes you need something more, in which case you do forgiveness or atonement, which requires conversations with other people. I'm gonna quickly walk you through each of them and then provide you with resources that you can use to do this work after you watch the video. Alright, so the first way that you deal with evidence is restoring. You typically do it through some type of meditation or reflection. Every time I've done it has been in a chair with my eyes closed, and it's been incredibly powerful for both me and my clients. If you're one of my clients, you might have some experience with this. What you do is recall the memory just like you did when we were first digging for your threat, and you review it. You review what happened and what you made up in that moment, the conclusions or decisions that you made. And then you just take a moment to get present to the emotion. Getting present to the emotion is like activating all of the space that's being taken up by that piece of evidence. So it's really important to get present to that. Once you do that, then you go through a 5-step process. First, you extend compassion to everyone in the memory, including yourself. Then you extend forgiveness to everyone in the memory, including yourself. Then you extend gratitude. Although it was a painful experience, in some way it helped you grow, it gave you a gift, or it made you stronger. And then you extend power. You say to yourself in that memory what you feel like you always wanted or needed to hear. And then you replace the story. Instead of it meaning something that supports your evidence, you change the story so it means something different that actually supports your new view of being the source of your answer. I'm not including the entire process here, but I am recording a guided meditation that walks you through that process. And I very highly recommend that you do this with each and every piece of evidence that you want to restore. Let me give you a really powerful example of how I restory one of the most impactful events of my life. And it actually happened unexpectedly. It happened around the time that I was working my first real job. My work had become extraordinarily difficult because all of a sudden I was doing the work of like 5 people because all of the people in my department had quit the year before. And for some reason, this was especially triggering for me. After reflecting on it for a while, I realized it was triggering me because I felt abandoned. And I realized that the last time I really felt that way was when I was 7 years old and my dad left me and my brother at home to go get drunk and high. So that unique setup of events led me to being in a depressed state for about 3 to 4 months because I was ruminating on the fact that I had been abandoned. And I didn't know this at that time, but that was more evidence that I wasn't wanted. So one night, standing over the kitchen sink, washing dishes, I don't remember what happened, but I'm thinking about the fact that my dad left me, and I realized, wait a minute, my dad didn't abandon me. He actually left because he was an addict and he went to rehab. And by going to rehab, he recovered, and then he moved 10 blocks away from my house. Then I lived with him like half of my childhood. That's not really abandonment. And seeing that, there was an immediate shift, like night and day. My dad actually left so that he could stay. He left because he loved me and my siblings, and he didn't want to hurt us. And because he left, he recovered. And the thing that was causing me so much pain immediately became an incredible wellspring of gratitude. Standing there over the dishes, I burst into tears. In that moment, all the depression, all the resentment, it just evaporated. And all that was there was gratitude and happiness. That's what's possible from doing this work. And just restoring something may be incredibly powerful for you. It may be enough. That memory or piece of evidence may just naturally lose its charge or power over you, or actually become a source of something positive in your life, taking on a whole new flavor. Or it might not. Like, you might do it and it might still have some strong nagging energy around it for you, in which case you want to try out one of the other tools, which is having a conversation with someone for forgiveness or atonement. But before we move on, go back to your list and write re-story next to each piece of evidence that you wrote that you feel you can actually use that tool for. The next way that you finish your unfinished business is through a forgiveness conversation. Forgiveness is required when someone else said or did something that hurt us. And whatever it was, that often became evidence for our threat. And forgiveness can often be one of the most difficult steps to take, especially with people who we feel have really hurt us. However, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Holding on to anger, grudges, or resentment is really like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It usually doesn't get people what they really want. When we don't forgive, we just become that container for negative energy. And when we don't have that conversation, the person never actually gets the impact. And in never getting the impact, they never have to deal with themselves. A forgiveness conversation in one fell swoop allows you to change your story, release the negative energy, communicate the impact, and get out of the way so the universe can actually deal with that person. And the way you do it is by calling that person, sharing what happened and what you made up from what happened, and then you share the impact of that, how it contributed to your threat, and then how your threat has actually impacted your whole life over the years, what it's actually been like for you living with that. And then you go one step further. You share with them that you are choosing to be the source of your answer, and because of that, you're choosing to forgive them. So you say to them, I'm forgiving you. It often really helps if you did the work to re-story that event or memory first, because that will give you everything you need to really have that conversation. Once I had my realization about my dad leaving me, but not really leaving me, I had to share it with him. Like 30 minutes after I finished washing the dishes, I called him and I followed the same script that I'm gonna be sharing with you guys. But I just said, Dad, when you left, I made up that you abandoned me, that you left me. And I've been living my whole life trying to have you come back, and I never really saw that you were there the whole time and you actually left because you loved me. Now, of course, this is the abridged version, but I said, I forgive you. That removed something that was in the way of my relationship with my dad. I couldn't even be related to him because I had all of that resent there. So take a moment, go back to that list and write forgive next to each piece of evidence that you need to forgive someone for, and write the name of the person that you need to forgive. As a side note, sometimes all you need to do is forgive yourself for something. And you do that in the restoring exercise. And then there's atonement. Atonement is required when you believe you did or said something that negatively impacted or hurt another person. Oftentimes, the thing that you did was either because of your threat, like you were reacting to your threat, and so you acted in a way that negatively impacted someone, or the fact that you did the thing in the first place became evidence that your threat was true, or both. So atonement involves a conversation where you call and acknowledge what happened, and you take ownership for what happened, and you acknowledge the impact that those actions had on a person and the impact that it's had on you this entire time, carrying that guilt or shame around. And you share like where that came from, like how your threat led you to do that, how your own hurt and pain led you to causing pain for them. And similar to your forgiveness conversations, you share that you're choosing to be the source of your answer. And you just ask them for forgiveness. And look, they may or may not forgive you. That's not the point of doing this, to actually get their forgiveness. The point of doing it is for you to take ownership and atone for something you did. I'll also be sharing a script for this so that you can do the work. Let me tell you about an atonement conversation that I had. We've all probably had the experience of either being ghosted on or ghosting on someone else. I realized that I ghosted on this guy that I was dating, and the reason why I stopped responding to him and became distant was because I saw us getting closer. And I was afraid that if we got any closer, I would have to tell him I was HIV positive and that he would then not want me, he would reject me. But I didn't communicate that to him, I just cut him off. So I literally called and shared that fear with him. I said, hey, I want to clear something up. I want to acknowledge that I stopped responding to you cold turkey. And the reason I did that is because I'm HIV positive, and I was deeply afraid that if I told you that you would reject me or crush me. And now I'm choosing to be the source of being wanted and loved. And I hope you can forgive me. It was that simple. And the funny thing is, his response was like, okay, you want to start talking again? Like, what? Just from having that quick conversation, it was immediate proof that even with HIV, I'm still wanted and loved. And so my choice to be the source of being wanted and loved got more evidence to support that. Now, I want to point something out here. Sometimes from having these conversations, people will respond in ways that rock your world, that rock you to your core, that surprise you. It can be a very intense emotional experience in a good way. And sometimes people just say, it's no big deal, don't worry about it, I was never upset. Either way, you can actually move forward without whatever guilt or regret you were holding on to. And the story that you had around that piece of evidence tends to just dissolve. So take another moment, go back to your list and write atone next to each piece of evidence that you need to atone for, and write the person's name who you need to atone with. And let me make one more side note. Sometimes evidence is like something you did or didn't do that only you know about. And it might just be a task or an activity that you made a promise to yourself and you didn't do it, and you're using that as evidence to prove that your threat is true. In those cases, You either need to restory it or just do the thing. Just in doing the thing is one less piece of baggage that's in your background. So this is it. It's really simple and probably a little scary, but your work for the next 2 weeks and really to the end of this program is to clear each and every piece of evidence off that list. Now, I want to be clear with you. If you really want complete freedom, if you want breakthrough after breakthrough, if you want to finally not have your threat have a grip on you, then it's not optional. It's not like, oh, well, I'll do some and then I won't do the others. You gotta clear everything out so that you can return to that state of childlike, limitless energy and seeing the whole world as anything's possible and being hopeful and really being the source of your answer, not only for yourself but for your life, because in having these conversations you're actually giving your answer to other people. This is how I went from being chronically anxious every waking moment, every situation, some sleeping moments, to being completely free and fully self-expressed. I dealt with all of my evidence and I continue to do so on a regular basis. If you want complete freedom from your threat, then this is what's required. There's no way around it. I pray that you take it on with your own courage and your own relentless commitment to complete freedom. That's it for this week. Peace.